Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Most specifically, good evening, because it's nighttime here. How y'all doing today? Welcome to another PhotoJoseph Live, whatever this is, kind of a show. Today, we'll be talking primarily about HDR, because I'm doing a lot in HDR lately, and I thought, maybe we should talk about it. Maybe you guys want to learn a little bit about it. Maybe you guys want to hear how this works, and maybe even have some questions about it, because you've been trying it and getting stuck somewhere. I don't know, but it's a free-for-all. It's just an HDR free-for-all tonight. So let's just see who is here in the chat room tonight. Who do we got saying hello? We have Mr. Aaron Parecki, who I believe is practicing his Croatian. Let's see. Oops, get the right chat up there. There we go. Is that what that was? Was that Croatian, buddy? It sounds, it's kind of like Slovenian a little bit. The dobre večer, like a dobre večer. I think we're probably Croatian would be my guess there. I was gonna search it beforehand, but then I decided that would be cheating. That would be cheating. We also have Miguel Novello, who says, perfect timing, was planning on shooting HLG tomorrow. Oh, interesting. Well, that's kind of cool. Good. Well, then you can ask any question that you want. We have Buenas noches de Clovis, California. Excellent. Who else we got here? Raul saying good night. I got to figure out a different way. I don't like that I have to look down to do this. I need like my chat thing up here, so I'm not looking down so much, but there's always one more thing to change, isn't there? One more thing to change. From Stanford, but from the Yucatan, Mexico. Nice. Somebody's getting their travel on. Excellent. Excellent. Good to hear. Hello from Japan. Awesome. We got a Canadian living in Japan. Aha. Very good. Croatian is probably pretty close to Slovenia, right? Yes, it is quite close. It is. My wife speaks both. Obviously, Slovenian being her native, she speaks that better. But yeah, she absolutely can speak Croatian. It's kind of funny. She always says that Slovenians always understand Croatians and can speak to Croatians, but the Croatians never understand the Slovenians. It's one of those kind of like border things. I don't know. It kind of is what it is. Monterrey. Hello, Raul. And good day to Lee. Oh, good to see you, Lee. Good day from down under to you. Excellent. Well, we're filling up the house here. This is always very, very good. Always nice to see. So welcome once again. Let's see here. We are probably not going to have a huge audience tonight just because I know this topic is a little bit niche. But and Lee is, I'm glad Lee's here. Lee's quite the expert on HDR as well. Maybe you can correct me in my ways along the way, or maybe you can just stoke the conversation along with some of your own observations and into the complexities of HDR. But I wanted to take this as a time to talk about what it takes to do HDR. And obviously I want to answer any questions that you guys have, but if there's not just a slew of questions to start off, then I thought I would just talk through a bit of the workflow. I'm not going to do a demo of the workflow. I don't need to get into all that. I just want to do kind of a high level overview. Many of you who've been following along for a while now know that I've been promising / threatening to do an HDR video for quite a while. That video is happening. It's been a project in progress for a very, very long time. In fact, let's see, what did I end up with? Now I don't remember how many, I should open up the script. I don't remember how many pages it was, but I have talked about it on here before. It's some ridiculous number of pages. It's going to be, I think I timed it out at like 90 minutes? No, I think it was 60 minutes of education. I don't remember now. Great, not even know where I put my script. Let me just do a quick little search for HDR on my hard drive and find the thing. Here we go. Workflow series, that's the one. It has come in at its final count of, get the right page up here. Where's the page count? 32 pages. It is 14,000 words. It's a big script. So because I know that is obviously it's going to still take some time to get out because there's a ton to shoot and tons of B-roll to shoot and et cetera, et cetera. I am going to do, it's going to be one of my next videos actually, is going to be a very short version, the TLDR or TLDW version of this video, which is also going to be kind of a teaser trailer and also enough to get people to watch it and go, oh, actually, it doesn't sound like it is that hard, but I do want to know more about it. So that's kind of my plan with that. So this is more an opportunity to just talk about it. And also I wanted to see if you guys have any questions based off of what I go through tonight that I hadn't thought of that I go, oh, I really need to include that in this bigger project. It's kind of one of those, this is like a test bed thing for the bigger project just to make sure that it all works out right. So there's that. So that's kind of where that's going. Let's see, a couple of the chats came in. Let's just see where to go. There it goes. Rather keep quiet and if people think I'm stupid than open my mouth and confirm it. Yeah, see, Lee, I'm on YouTube. I don't have that opportunity. I get to confirm to everybody that I'm stupid pretty much all the time. Hello, Fisher Math. Fisher Math. I don't know what that means, but hello back to you. TLDW, too long didn't watch. That's right. That's exactly what it'll be. The TLDW version, the too long didn't watch version. That'll be the first one that goes out. And again, that'll be like a teaser / very high level overview. Germany, 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, good. I'm glad you're up for me. Thank you very much. All right. So let's get into some of the top level things. And whoever was that earlier that said you were going to be shooting HLG, let's see here. Where was that? Here we go. That was Miguel saying you're planning on shooting some HLG tomorrow. That's awesome. And why don't we actually start with that? We'll start with what HDR is and how you shoot it. Let's just do that to start off with. So let's start with the kind of what HDR is on its own. Because I think for a lot of people, and it's funny because I didn't think about this before I tweeted it. And then I realized based off the first response to my tweet about this show that I should have been clear about it. This is HDR video. And a lot of people who are used to HDR, familiar with HDR, are familiar with it from the photography world. And I'm here to tell you that photography, HDR, when you see like one of those, an HDR photo, it's got all these crazy colors and everything in it, that ain't HDR. That is not HDR. That term has been misappropriated there. It is not HDR. It is tone mapped. HDR requires a 10-bit image or better to be HDR. What you see on the internet as far as photos go, those are all 8-bit. So unless you are somehow looking at a 10-bit image on a 10-bit monitor, it is not HDR, it's tone mapped. The idea behind tone mapping is you're taking tones from the higher range of exposure, the lower range of exposure, and blending them together so that you see more data. You're getting the amount of data. You're taking 10 bits worth of data or 12 bits or 14 bits worth of data and squeezing it into an 8-bit space, but that is tone mapping. That is not an HDR image. HDR, to be HDR, requires two things. It requires, first of all, a minimum of a 10-bit color space. So you have to have enough color space to have enough colors. Those colors have to be, the 8-bit color space is only 16.7 million colors, which I like to give the example that, it sounds like a lot of colors, but if you've ever seen banding on a clear blue sky, or I see this in a lot of YouTube videos, YouTubers who have a clean background, like a gray background with a subtle color gradient on it, looks beautiful, except it is banding in 8-bit on YouTube. So that is 8-bit banding. There's just not enough colors in 16.7 million colors to do a really smooth gradient. 10-bit color, however, is how many billions? Shoot, 4 billion? Got the math, now I've forgotten the number even. Somebody will tell me in the chat. I think it's it is billions of colors. It's a lot of colors. And that's 10-bit. And you can go to 12 and 14-bit as well. And that's like really high-end HDR production. But you have a lot more colors. So that's the first thing that it has to be. It has to be in 10-bit. If it's not 10-bit, it's not true HDR. The second thing is that it has to be a high nit value. Nit is the brightness level. And the really important thing to understand about nit value is what we're used to with standard dynamic range. So the opposite of HDR is SDR, standard dynamic range. What we're used to with SDR is a 100 nit maximum. And you'll see things that go to like 110 nit, but it's 100 nit maximum. And if you are used to grading in Rec 709 color space and HDR, looking at scopes, you're used to that 100 on the scale. That's also called 100 IRE. But when it comes to the nit comparison, it's actually the same scale. It's 0 to 100 nits of brightness. HDR has a theoretical maximum of 10,000 nits, and that's massive. Kind of irrelevant because nothing goes anywhere near that bright today. But what's really important to understand about the nit scale is that it is a logarithmic curve. So 10,000 nits is not 100 times brighter than 100 nits. There's no really straight way to measure it because a lot of it has to do with visual perception, but it is expected to be about 10 times as bright. But that's up at the 10,000 nit range. The range that we typically work in is 1,000 nits. That's our standard today in 2021. Working in HDR, you're working in 1,000 nit range. Now you can walk into like a Best Buy or a Costco or whatever and look at the TVs, and you'll see TVs that are advertised as HDR, and you might see a maximum peak brightness range of 700 nits. You might see it up to 1,000. You might even see like 13, 14, 1,500 nits. It's important to understand that just because a TV says 700 nits, that doesn't mean that it's any noticeably darker for most uses than anything that's at like 13, 1400 nits because of that logarithmic scale. It's just not that much brighter. Whereas when you go from 100 nits to 700 or 100 to 1,000, it's massively brighter. So a good, and different TVs also measure their nit values differently. There's peak brightness, there's sustained brightness, a lot of different specs to look at. We don't need to go into all that crap, but effectively, a good LG TV, an OLED TV, is probably about the best out there for consumer purchases, and those are 700 nit, sometimes a little bit higher, but that is an insanely awesome television. Very, very, very good. I think it's Samsung does QLED, I think that's right, and theirs go brighter, but one of the things to understand is that their black is not pure black. Their black is a high level of gray, and so even though it's brighter, their black is not darker, and so the range, and which is a whole part of the dynamic range, from the darkest dark to the brightest bright, might actually be less than you're getting on a lower nit value LG TV. And I'm not sponsored by LG. I bought 2 of the damn things because they're so good. Nobody's given me any of these, but it's done my homework, and this is what I ended up with. The range itself is actually greater, and your blacks are actually pure black, and it just looks better. So anyway, so there's just a little bit about the nit value and all that. All right, so your 10-bit color space and your high nit value, those two things together, what make HDR. So that's kind of what is HDR at a very high level view. So next I want to talk about HLG versus, we'll call it the hard HDR, because HLG is the easy HDR, and then there's the hard HDR. We'll do that. Let me take a look at the comments. I want to do the comments as we go in here, and we'll sort this out. So let's see here. Let me get the comments back up. And Will says, if you don't want to look down, I think get a big screen TV from Best Buy during Black Friday, put it behind your camera in front of you. See, I already have a screen right here. There is a screen underneath me, my second monitor, and whenever I'm doing demo stuff, that's the one that I'm looking at. So I could put the chat on that screen, but the way I've got things wired up, it's a whole separate computer that's dedicated to the chat, and it just kind of works better for this. It's just, I like working with it this way, but anyway, either way, I'd have to look away. I do have a tiny screen, a little 5-inch monitor that is on a Parrot teleprompter right in front of me here. So I can put an image on that display, but the chat would be too small. I'd be like, and we'll set. So it's just, that wouldn't be pleasant. So anyway, that's just the way it is for now. Teleprompter is life-changing. Thank you. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, but again, the way I've got things routed up here just really wouldn't work out for this. I could have put a bigger teleprompter screen on there, but again, this is at my desk. It's a whole, it's just, I'm not. But you're right. You're right. And I already have that set up, but I'm just not going to do that. Okay. Surya, hi from California. Very cool. Now we're on different discussions here. Oh, fresh on math equals good evening in Scottish. Oh, fish out of math. Cool. Would that be Gaelic? Or am I going to get yelled at for getting things totally wrong here? Do you know any reason why I wouldn't be able to do a super chat? The button is on my screen. Yes. Yes, there's a very good reason you can't do super chat, because you are on my new channel, the PhotoJoseph live channel, not the original PhotoJoseph channel. This channel is not yet monetized because I don't yet have 1,000 subs on here. And it's funny, even though I hit the 100 subs minimum to be able to get a custom channel name like in the first day, I still can't do that. Apparently you got to wait at least 30 days or maybe longer, and it's been that, I don't know. I still can't do a custom channel name. So I can't monetize until I get to 1,000 subs. So keep subbing. If you're not subbed, hit sub on this one because this is a separate channel, and then I will eventually be able to monetize. I appreciate the effort, but unfortunately it's not going to happen today. But thanks for thinking about it. All right, other chat, 1 billion. Is it just 1 billion, Matthew? Is it the one? It's 1.0 something billion. That's what it is, right? That's right. Okay, so 10-bit is 1 point something, 1.0 something, 1.07 maybe billion. You're right, not 4 billion, whatever. It's a lot. It's a lot of colors. A billion. Oh, here we go, 1.07. Woohoo, I got it right. Oh, Mr. Fraser, thank you for joining. 1.07 billion colors. Are you sure you're not off by one color? Sorry, I had to. Let's see here. Most TVs are in the 400 to 700 nit range. That is correct. And again, very, very bright, very noticeable difference. The difference between 100 and 400 nits, 100 to 700 nits is massive. It is a massive, massive difference. Is the LG the C10? I own two LGs. I own an LG C9, which I bought when the C9 was current. And that one ended up going home because it was really good and really big. It was a 55-inch. It was too big to fit in here. And so it went home. And I now have a 48-inch LG C10, which I use to verify my HDR work on a consumer monitor. I don't necessarily grade from it because I got an XDR. It's amazing. And that is an absolute joy to grade on. However, I need to be able to look at it to do really accurate grading. I mean, for anything, not just HDR, but for anything, you need to look at it at different monitors. I haven't paid to have it calibrated. I'm not spending $50,000, $60,000 on a super professional reference monitor. I've got the XDR display. I've got the LG, and I also have, it's an older Sumo 19, which is HDR, but it's really their version of HDR on this is a bit suspect, but they are sending me a, what's the new one called? The Neon to replace, well, they're sending a Neon because of the video that I'm doing, so that's going to get incorporated in that, and that's not here yet, but then I'll have 3 different HDR displays to look at that'll give me kind of a balance between those, what things look like. And then, of course, you got to load it on your phone and see what it looks like there in the end, because some of those people watch this stuff anyway. So there you go. All right, moving on. Beyond this, you can put up a camera and jump on it. Oh, I can put up a camera and jump on if you want me to at some point. Oh, I think that'd be cool, actually. Do you have a you have an ATEM Mini Pro? Because we should set that stuff up in advance. I don't have a 1-up screen to cut you into, but we can do this another time, Lee. Let's do this another time where we can get you on the show. If you've got an ATEM, we can do you over the streaming bridge. If not, we can sort up another way. But let's plan that in advance and not just kind of call in to do that. Okay, but thank you for the offer. I do appreciate that. All right, I'm quick scroll through, see if there's any other questions I want to pull up on here, and then I'm going to move on to my explanation. Okay, nothing else is questions. Scottish Gaelic. Aha, good. I was right. You do have an ATEM Mini Pro ISO. Okay, good. Lee, then let's do that. Maybe even next week. we'll talk about it. Email me. Let's talk about that. Let's get you on the show to talk about it, because I think that would be fun, and we could really go into some of the super nerdy, geeky, techie stuff about this. Okay, so let me go back into the explanation. Let's go into HLG versus the hard HDR. So HLG, hybrid log gamma. This is a mode that you will find on, I think, most high-end DSLM cameras now. So obviously all the Lumix cameras, you get your Sonys and your Canons, whatever. I think a lot of these cameras have an HLG mode, a hybrid log gamma mode. And hybrid log gamma is HDR out of the box. So what you shoot, you load it onto an HDR TV, and you are seeing it in HDR, meaning you're seeing it in 10 bits because it's a 10-bit format, and you're seeing it in a high nit playback. You're seeing that high value nit, that really bright image color. Looks fantastic, right? HLG, the hybrid part of it, the hybrid part of the name, includes a SDR, standard dynamic range, logarithmic LUT that is baked into it, so that if you play that same footage on an SDR screen, it also looks great. It's obviously not HDR, but it still looks great. It looks essentially as if you had shot it in SDR. So you're getting 2 for 1. When you shoot HLG, you're getting something that plays back automatically in HLG on an HDR monitor, in HDR on an HDR monitor, and plays back in SDR on an SDR monitor. So super awesome, right? That is what makes HLG awesome. It's easy to use. If you've got an iPhone 12 that shoots Dolby Vision is HLG. This is why you can shoot HDR on your phone. You look at it on your phone, you're like, wow, that's HDR, that looks really cool. And then you load the same thing up on a regular Mac screen, and it's not HDR, and it still looks good. That's HLG at work. So Dolby Vision is HLG, same thing. So that's the advantage of it. The disadvantage of HLG is that it is not as flexible to grade, not at all. So you could think of it like shooting in, in a normal format, in a vivid format, or in a standard format, or a portrait format, or whatever. One of those other profiles, not formats, sorry, profiles, shooting one of those other profiles on your camera where it looks good coming out of the camera, and you can do a little grading, right? You can change the exposure a little bit, you can shift the colors a little bit, but if you do too much, it breaks pretty quickly. Pretty quickly, that image falls apart. So that you get that same behavior in HLG as you do with a standard profile image. If you're shooting SDR and you want to get the maximum colors, you want the maximum flexibility, you shoot in log. I think most of us understand that. You shoot log, and then you have to grade it, right? You have to do your color grading. You can add a LUT and kind of cheat it and make it a little bit easier. The LUT might get you part way, and then you finish grading it, but you have to grade it. You can't deliver log footage, V-log, C-log, S-log, whatever. You can't deliver log footage as a final piece because it's not done. It's incomplete. You could kind of think of it, although this is not an accurate comparison, but it's a good way to think about it if you're coming from the world of photography. It is kind of like a raw photo, in that a raw photo coming out of camera without any work done to it looks flat. It needs to have work done to it. Now, pretty much every raw decoder these days is designed to take that raw image and make it look really good out of the box. That's just part of the process. But if you were to look at older early versions of raw decoders, what you got out of it was very flat and simple. Now, log is not raw. You can shoot raw. That's a whole separate thing. Log is not raw, but raw is log. So that's an important differentiation there. But anyways, kind of like a raw photo, you have to work on it. You have to make it look better by adding color to it, adding contrast, saturation, etc. But you have a lot more flexibility, right? You can do a lot more with it. So when you're working in that type of an HDR space, shooting in log, you're shooting in the same log that you shoot when you're shooting for SDR. It's the same log. You don't have to change the log format. It's just log. Log is a 10-bit or greater format, depending on your camera. So you already have that 10-bit, and then you bring it into your computer and you grade it for HDR. Now, if you're using Final Cut, you are switching your library over to a high color gamut library. I think that's right, which gives you that HDR color space to work in. Otherwise, you're working in an SDR library, and you can't do HDR. So once you shoot in log, you can go either direction. And this is one of the really important things. I think that a lot of people think, oh, well, I can't do HDR because I don't have a camera that shoots HDR, or I don't have a camera that can shoot in something that I can turn into HDR. If your camera shoots log, you can. I've done HDR grades from GH4 footage. It doesn't look as good as the stuff that came out of a GH5 or an S5 or an S1H, but it works. All the data that you need is there. You can absolutely do it. So if you have a camera that shoots log, you have a camera that can shoot HDR, or you can turn it into HDR. Now, one of the biggest challenges with doing this is that when you have a HDR project, and this is not HLG now, right? This is HDR, something called Rec 2020, BT, but it's a whole bunch of other crap that goes. Anyway, it's not HLG. This is just HDR. And if you take that just HDR image and you load it up on an SDR screen, it's going to look like crap. It will not look good at all. So you have to manually create a conversion LUT to go from HDR to SDR to have it look good on an SDR display. Now, if you're uploading your video to YouTube, YouTube will apply automatically their own generic HDR to SDR LUT, which will look okay, but it won't look great. So there's a process to make your own custom LUT that you can do. When you're done with your project, you make a single LUT, and this is specifically for YouTube. You make a single LUT that would take the whole thing and convert it over to SDR for SDR playback. And that's a big part of the process that I will be covering in that bigger video. So there's kind of that part of the delivery. When you're editing in HDR, you're in Final Cut or Resolve or Premiere, whatever, you're looking at a 10,000 nit range that you're working in. You can do incredible things to the image and really make those colors fly and look amazing. And that's what you get with the HDR. So, okay, with all that said, let me jump back down to the questions again. And let's see where we are. All right, back to the chit chat. Where were we? Oh, that's weird. This stopped refreshing. All right, let me just do a refresh on here. Clear this, get rid of this. My chat room down there stopped refreshing. And now, of course, it means I have absolutely no idea where I was. Well, we're going to start at the bottom here. Is Michael Ball, hey, buddy. Is it common for HLG to still be pretty gray compared to basic 709 profile? On the Zcam, HLG looks most closer to their Z-Log than 709. No, it is not common for that. So I don't know what Zcam is doing. I've never shot with a Zcam for anything like that. No, HLG should be looking good out of camera. It's, you know, it's the fun of it. It's the beauty of it. You just shoot it and it's done. It looks great. And yeah, so no, I don't know why that would be happening. Sorry. Wide gamut library. Thank you, Lee. That's what the Final Cut library is set to, is wide gamut. That was the word I was looking for. Aaron Hinton. Oh, hello, Aaron. Aaron is a professional colorist who has been working with me on this HDR project. So he knows everything that I don't know. He is teaching me a lot. Thank you, Aaron. Aaron says, Apple's HLG Dolby Vision is a non-standard implementation of Dolby Vision, though. Standard Dolby Vision is PQ, perceptual quantization, which is the same color spacing gamma as HDR10 instead of HLG. There you go. Thank you for clarifying. So that's, yeah, it's weird. The Apple thing is weird, but I think, as with everything with Apple, the beauty of it is you don't need to know anything, right? You just shoot in HDR and you load this up on your HDR TV and it looks amazing. You can take it into an app like LumaFusion. You can take it into the iMovie app and you can edit that video, output an HDR video and put that up on your HDR TV, put it up on YouTube, play it back on your HDR TV, and it looks fantastic. So that's obviously what Apple does, right? They try to make things really, really easy on that consumer level, and that is what that Dolby Vision is. It looks great. You don't have the flexibility that you have of shooting log, but as far as just what comes out of camera, man, this stuff looks really, really good. So that is cool. Here it says, yeah, Apple's great. Yep. When it comes to that sort of thing, they are definitely great. Matt saying, I have no idea why Apple did this Dolby. Somebody had to have gotten paid, I guess. Oh, I'm sure there was some money changing hands around there. I am sure there was. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I guess that was all the chat, so it didn't stop refreshing. People just stopped commenting. All right, so let's see here. Where do I go next? Let's talk a little bit more about the delivery aspect of it, because that is one of the big challenges. So I mentioned that you have to create a custom LUT. If you're doing, not HLG, if you're doing log into HDR, you have to create a custom LUT for that. And that is, well, Aaron Hinton on here, he's the one who, he did a video on that workflow using, wow, brain fart stopping, Resolve, thank you, using Resolve. And you have to do that in Resolve. You can't do this in Final Cut because Final Cut doesn't allow you to output a LUT. It's just like, come on, Apple, give me the LUT output option. They don't. But Resolve is really designed for this sort of thing. And the good thing is that you can actually do this with the free version of Resolve, even if you're working in 4K, because you're not outputting 4K video, you're just outputting a LUT. So what you have to do is bring your HDR video into Resolve and you add a bunch of pieces to it that I will be covering in my in-depth video, or you can look on Aaron's channel if you want to get into it today and follow his video. I will warn you, he goes fast and you have to pause it like every 3 seconds and figure out where you're putting things. It took me I watched that video like 150 times, I think, Aaron. But you add a bunch of nodes in there and you do a whole thingy thing, and you basically are taking your HDR video and you're bringing it down into SDR space. And for doing that, it's super helpful to have an SDR monitor that you can look at. So you're, like the Sumo that I've got sitting here, I can switch that over to SDR, and then I can look at it on there and see what it looks like on a standard monitor. And again, you need to test everything, see what it looks like. So you take this, you make this conversion inside of Resolve, and then you output a LUT. And then you use, I kid you not, a command line tool that is provided by YouTube, a command line tool to take that LUT and embed it into your video file, that you now have a single video file that has the HDR to SDR LUT embedded in it, and you upload that to YouTube. It's ridiculous. Like, they just need a little interface thing on the just import LUT, but they don't. Actually, truth be told, what I really would like to see YouTube do is to offer you the ability to upload 2 versions of the same video, your HDR video and an SDR conversion, your own SDR conversion. Because the problem with adding a LUT is even though it's your LUT, it is still a 1 LUT for the entire video. So if you have a video, it's fine if, you're talking head like this where things don't really change, you do 1 LUT and you're good. But if you were shooting like a feature film or just, short film, whatever, and you had dark, moody indoor scenes and bright outdoor scenes, and then you had different looks, like you wanted to have one part of your scene, one part of your show is bright and saturated, another part is really kind of muted and moody and lifted blacks, whatever. Having a single LUT that makes all of that look good is going to be really, really hard, nay, impossible to do. So if you're doing a true SDR grade of it, you would be going shot by shot and doing an SDR version of that entire film shot by shot. If YouTube would let you upload both an HDR and an SDR version and then just deliver whatever the appropriate version is to the viewer, that'd be amazing. But, they don't do that. So for now, you have to build a LUT in Resolve and then embed it in a command line tool and upload it. It's kind of a pain. But so if you look at my most recent videos, not the A10 mini series, but the ones before that, the one that I did on adding 7 ports or adding 3 more ports to your A10 mini and a few before that, those are HDR. And when you watch them, if you see them on an HDR screen, you'll see the HDR badge pop up, whether it's on your TV or your computer monitor or on your iPhone, you'll see that HDR badge pop up. There are some kind of, I'll call them fringe cases, where if you have a certain version of a browser and a certain version of the OS, YouTube gets confused. It tries to deliver the HDR version, but your browser or your monitor doesn't display it properly, and you get something that looks absolutely awful, which is why you'll see on all my HDR videos, the first couple of seconds, there's a little pop-up that says, does this look like poop? And a little poop emoji, click here. And I have uploaded an SDR version of that video, which is unlisted, but it's only available via that link. And invariably, those always end up getting a couple dozen views because some people come across that and they're like, what is going on? And then they see it and they tap on that and they see the proper SDR version. But YouTube really should make this a lot better for us. That would be nice. Let's see here. Matt says, curious if you tried the Color Finale plugin for Final Cut that can output LUT. Let's bring that back up. That can output LUTs. I have not tried it for this because the conversion process is so precise and there's color space conversions involved, which I do not think that the Color Finale will do. Color Finale does beautiful color grading, but I don't believe it does the color space conversion. And that is one of the required steps in this whole process. So no, I haven't tried it for that use. I have tried it. I do have Color Finale. I never really got into it though. I feel like it's one of those things I really need to spend some time learning, watch a bunch of training videos on. I bought it I don't know, a year or 2 years ago, and I just never got into it. It looks amazing, but I just never did really get into it. Aaron says, I agree 100% that YouTube should let you upload separate HDR and SDR versions of a video with the same URL. Just detect which one to play based on your screen. That would be the best. That would be, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be awesome? Come on, guys. Come on, guys. What about the HDR tools in Final Cut Pro? Lee asks. Okay, so Lee's leading the question here. So that will allow me to export an SDR version, but again, it won't let me export that SDR LUT. So there are tools in Final Cut that allow you to change color spaces. There's a lot of different methods to go about doing this. But if you are mixing, let's say you've got a vlog, a log shot that you're editing. So you're editing in Rec 2020, you're editing in HDR, you're starting with log footage, but you want to bring in an HLG clip. You drop that on, it's going to look like crap on your timeline. But Final Cut has a tool that you drop onto it and you say, oh, this is a conversion, convert this from HLG to Rec 2020. You just choose that and now it falls into the right color space and everything, and it looks great. So you can incorporate, you can mix them, and you can go both ways with that. You can take an HDR clip and drop it onto a standard definition, standard dynamic range timeline, a Rec 709 timeline. And again, same tool, HDR tools, drop that on, choose the right one. HLG to Rec 709. Those are all options in there. So that works really, really well. And you could output the entire thing by taking your whole final project, dropping the HDR tool on there and say output to Rec 709. But again, now you have a whole separate video, not a custom LUT. And that's a generic conversion. And if you want to do this right, you want to do your own. And I always end up, it doesn't take long. I'll probably spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes scrubbing through my scene and just making little tweaks and like, oh, the blues are getting a little pulled down in this conversion. Let's boost them up a little bit. Looking at the scopes, looking at the scene, and you just kind of back and forth, and you find that balance point and you go, yeah. And I think if you watch my latest videos on an SDR screen, you'll agree they look good. They look perfectly fine. If you want to watch it on an HDR screen, it look even better. It's super nice. So there's all that. Let's see here. Michael says, thanks, we'll keep playing around, though right now 709 is working well for streaming. Maybe I can pull up an example later. So you can actually, I should probably do this one of these days. You can actually stream now on YouTube in HLG. So I could stream in HDR. So for anyone who's watching an HDR, on an HDR monitor, you'd be able to watch these live streams in HDR. I should probably do that one of these days. I think I have everything in place to do that. I got to really kind of dig into it a little bit more, but you can do it. You can do it. Lisa says, totally agree. You still need to tweak with HDR tools, but it's a good way to start, like using a LUT in a normal grading. Sure. Good way to start. Again, giving you that, output, that final output, if that's what you need as a secondary output. So what I've done, because I'm taking the time to build a custom LUT, when I need to output a straight SDR video, which I do, I output an SDR video to upload to Facebook, and I output an SDR video version of the video, as I explained, to upload as an unlisted video on YouTube, as that kind of backup to click on in case the HDR one is freaking out on you. The way that I do that is I just take my HDR video and drop the SDR LUT on it that I've already custom made and in Final Cut, and I output that as an SDR video. So I get two videos with that LUT. I get two uses of that LUT. I use it to embed in the file so that YouTube uses it to make the conversion, and I use it in Final Cut to embed the LUT to output an SDR. So I have an SDR output that matches whatever YouTube is going to play back automatically. So it's kind of this is what you would have seen had YouTube behaved properly. So that's how I do that process. Doing the custom LUT is really not that hard. It's a few steps you have to get right. And obviously the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And there's a few quirks and kind of anomalies to it. But once you get your head around it, it goes fairly quickly. Like I said, I'll spend 10, maybe 15 minutes working on that to get a really nice SDR conversion out of it. So there's that. Hey, you know what? Actually, this is an interesting question. Since Aaron is on here with me, what you're looking at right now of me is a log image with a LUT applied to it. So this LUT is being baked in for the output. This is a custom LUT. This is a LUT that Aaron built for me, and I would love to hear what you guys think of it. I look at it on a bunch of different monitors, and I go, I think it should be a little brighter. I think it should be a little more saturated. And then I change my mind, and so I haven't asked him to make any tweaks to it, but I would love to get your guys' opinions on, obviously on the screens that you're looking at right now. How do you think this look? How does my skin tone look? Does it look, too green, too pink? Does it look good to you? Drop that feedback into the chat room right now. That would be great to hear. I want to hear what you guys are seeing and what your perception of it is. I'm sure it'll be very interesting for Aaron to see how it's showing up on other people's screens. And this, I would just love to hear it. So please do. And Lee's saying check on different monitor and then on different browsers. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? You start looking at these on different displays and it does your head in. I mean, it's so frustrating. That's the world that's just the way it is. You look at the same image on a bunch of different places and you're like, oh, it looks good here. It looks no good here. I'll make a change. No, it doesn't look good here. Wait, which one am I grading for? At the end of the day, you just pick something and go with it and hope that it looks good. I've even watched videos from MKBHD where I'm looking at it going, ooh, that wasn't a good color grade. on one monitor, you look at another one like, oh yeah, that looks great. And you know, guy kind of knows what he's doing. It's tough, man. You can't win. You just cannot win. Michael Ball says 16-inch MacBook Pro. I think saturation is good. Skin tones are good, but a tad warmer would also be fine. Okay, thank you. Good to hear that feedback. Miguel says a bit less saturated than your usual videos. Oh, so this is a little bit less saturated. Okay, but don't compare it to what you're used to seeing. How do you feel about this video right now? Do you feel like it should be more saturated, or do you feel like it looks fine? Sky says iPhone looks great. Awesome. Richard says looks clean on an iMac. Okay, so it's interesting. You know, you look at it on an Apple display, and it's probably going to look good. You know, love Apple or hate them, man. Their screens are nice. Their screens are definitely good. Skin tone, sun-kissed Anglo on the iPad Pro 11-inch using the YouTube app looks good to me. Sun-kissed Anglo. Well, that's me. That's, yeah. Did I get a little? I don't think I did. I might have gotten a little tiny bit of red this weekend. Who knows? Who knows? I just go with the noir look, black and white across the board. I could do that, actually. I could do that. Should we go? Let's see here. Let me pull up the right thing. We'll go for a black and white look. That'll be good. Pull up. See, since I'm using the BGH1 with the Lumix Tether Cam, I can go in here, Lumix Tether app, I can go in here and I can make changes to it in real time. Oh, there it comes. I'm like, in real time, except that it's not loading. No, there it comes. It was just thinking for a minute. All right, let's see here. Photo style. Let's change this out of Vlog. Oh, I can't because I'm in... Oh, here we go. Let's see here. Let's go for black and white. Let's do like a dynamic monochromatic. There we go. Yeah, that's looking a little bit much, isn't it? Pull the highlights down on that a little bit. See, I can do all this in real time. It's so cool. Pull the shadows down, make it a little bit crunchier. There we go. Like that. Filter effect. Ooh, I can add a yellow filter. I don't think I've ever played with this. Ooh, that doesn't look good. Can I add an orange filter? Okay, this is getting carried away. Let's get the shadow and highlights back up in the default. Yeah, these color filters are definitely not working. Oh, that green, that's kind of okay. Let's turn that back off. So you got those. Then I got like the standard monochrome without going the crazy dynamic one. You've got your Cine V2, which this was kind of a starting point, although this is now overexposed. I'd have to bring the exposure down, but that was kind of a starting point for the custom grade. What happens if I set this to HLG? So that's HLG, but I'm not streaming in HLG. So you're seeing an HLG version with the SDR conversion into it. It's definitely too bright. It would have to be pulled down a little bit. All right, I'm going back to my log look. So let's stop confusing everybody. Where's my log? There it is. Back to that. Let's just cancel out of here. Make sure that my preset is back to the way it should be. And I believe we're good to go. I think I had brightened it up a little bit. Shoot, now I don't know if I had it at f3.5 or f4. Darn it. I think f4. We're just going to leave it there. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. So anyway, so that's fun. So yes, you can just do black and white if that's what your heart desires. Going back through the comments. Whew. Miguel says, I think it looks great. Excellent. iPad, your face could be a little bit warmer, Via says. Okay, I think that's the second note that it could be a touch warmer. Not burnt, just sun-kissed. Darren says, clean, crisp image with good skin tone on a Pixel book with a Chrome OS. Okay, that's cool. So the first non-Apple screen. That's good. But seriously, it looks good, and even on an XDR in Safari. I am, let's see here. Actually, I should look at it on the XDR as well. Let's make that big. Oh yeah, can I see this? Yeah, here we go. No, I can't. It's funny when you're looking at the, it does look like good colors. When you're looking at your own video in the YouTube Studio for the live playback, the highest resolution you can load your own video is 360. I'd have to load a whole separate browser window. That's pretty funny. Interesting. I'm getting questions. Oh, I forgot to turn off the chat. Okay, for those of you who are, for some strange reason, hanging out in the other video, on the PhotoJoseph channel, with a big thing over the face that says, this show's live, but don't watch it here. Scroll down and get to the link. I don't know why you're watching it there, but here, just to make sure that you have the link, I'm going to copy this and paste it into that chat. So we've got somebody in Vietnam and two other people. Oh, somebody from Germany and somebody from I don't know where, asking questions. Come over to this chat room and ask the questions here, please. Thank you very much. Okay. Oops. What did I just do? I'll put my monitor to sleep. Okay, moving on. Aaron also says, Apple makes more color accurate displays than any other consumer product manufacturers. Yeah, you gotta love that. Monochrome D. It was cool. You know, we'll do a live show entirely in black and white one day, just for giggles. It's a tad desaturated on my Dell 27-inch 4K, but looks good on the Blackmagic Video Assist 7 and pretty similar on my teleprompter, which is a little bit A11. I find that I have a Dell, I haven't used it in a while, but I found that my Dell monitor was always just a little bit undersaturated, so it could just be the monitor. Looks a bit more contrasty on the Dell. Yeah, that's Dell's. They're trying to, yeah, whatever. After seeing all the overexposed versions, my regular LUT looks dark now. Isn't that funny? Yeah, it's crazy how our eyes get tricked based on the images that are juxtaposed together. This was the problem that I had when I was going back and forth with Aaron designing the LUT for this. So he designed for me, so awesome. He created an HDR LUT. That was the starting point. I need an HDR LUT. He then made an SDR version that looks the same, obviously without the, brightness and so on, but essentially an SDR version that should look the same. And he, as close as one can. And then he built a conversion for the HDR to SDR LUT. So for the HDR to the SDR look. So I've got all that, all kind of like one little package from him. Very, very nice. Thank you very much, sir. When I was previewing them, I'm going back and forth between the SDR and the HDR, and I'd look at the HDR and then I'd go to the SDR and go, oh, the SDR needs to change, needs this, needs that. And then I'd walk away for a bit, come back, look at the SDR and go, oh yeah, the SDR looks great. Go to the HDR and go, oh, the HDR is too much, it's too much. You can't go back and forth between them. It's just, you can't, because your brain gets used to one thing and then a little bit of change, it thinks it's wrong. It's not better or worse, it's just wrong. So yeah, super frustrating. That's just the human eye. What are you gonna do? And the environment we're watching it in. Absolutely. Aaron and Lee, if you guys don't know each other, you totally should. Really love images at +1 or 2 after seeing a +3 or 4 exposure. Yep, exactly. Exactly. You kind of bump it up. This is why it's super important to play with the setting. Even if you're just editing a photo, take that photo exposure, make it a little brighter, a little darker, a little brighter, a little darker, and find that happy place. And then don't forget to go back and change it again later to see what happens. You might end up liking something different later on. All right, let's see here. So that's kind of the basics of the HDR workflow that I wanted to touch on, starting with the shooting, how you shoot it, and then obviously we didn't get into editing specifics, but that whole process of HLG versus log, what you at a base level have to do to make it into HDR, of course defining HDR in the beginning, and then a little bit about the output. So yeah, all that's really, I think it's all very, very interesting. And if you're doing HDR, you want to do HDR, it's stuff that you do need to know and understand, which is always fun. So hopefully that was interesting for those of you who are watching this. Again, if you have any questions about it, by all means, drop them into the chat. Let's just open this up to any other questions that anybody has, anything, any topic, anything goes right now. If you want to ask about anything at all, drop it up there. Now's your chance. If the folks who were over on the other chat have made it over here, then please come, ask your questions. It's funny that I forgot to turn off chat there. I look over, I'm like, somebody had a question about OBS and someone had they just want to know what time it was. Well, anyway, come on over. Water's lovely. Okay. Are you using Resolve to create and edit your LUTs? Yes, Darren, I'm using Resolve to do the HDR to SDR conversion. I know that Aaron is using Resolve for all of his work to do the custom LUTs that he made for me. Again, you can't create a LUT, you can't output a LUT from Final Cut natively. There are tools that will do it, but you don't have the same tools. I absolutely love Final Cut. I'm a huge fan of it. In the new color tools, they've been out for a couple years now, but the newer generation of color tools are great. It gets closer to what Resolve is. I know it's not the same as Resolve. I know that Resolve still does a lot more, but for what I do, this works. If I'm the kind of editor where I can do what I need to do in Final Cut. If I need something higher end, I will pay a professional colorist. I figure if it needs that level of attention, it probably should have somebody looking at it who's got a lot more experience than me. So I will pay somebody to do it in Resolve as opposed to just doing the color grade in Final Cut. But I think, my Final Cut color grades look pretty good, in my humble opinion. I've seen a few folks saying they don't like HDR because things are too bright or too saturated. That's, well, if you overdo it, then it is. I think actually, I'm glad you said that, Lee. That's a really good point. Just because you have 1,000 nits to work with doesn't mean you should fill it. And if you go too bright, it can be physically painful to watch. I watched, what was that show? Shoot, it was some cool sci-fi show on Netflix that looked amazing in HDR, but they overdid it. Like every neon sign was so bright that it actually was physically painful to watch. So, what's that show called? Man, that's going to kill me if I can't remember the name of it. It's like right there. It's like halfway on my tongue. Hopefully I will remember. It's a couple of words. Sci-fi. In the future, a guy's dead. They resurrect him to solve a murder for somebody, but it's all a big setup of, come on, somebody knows what it is. That's enough. Somebody will figure out what it is. That show, it looks beautiful, but it is physically painful to watch, unless you like manually turn the brightness down. Altered Carbon, that's what it is. Did anybody get it yet? Yes, Aaron, that's right. But before I saw it, I remembered it. Altered Carbon. I'd actually love to hear what you think of that, Aaron. Do you agree with me? Was it just too much, too oversaturated, too bright in spots? It was kind of painful to watch. Anyway, so what I was saying, based off of Lee's statement, was that just because you can make it that bright doesn't mean that you should. And if you overdo it, it does actually hurt to look at. It's not enjoyable. Your eyes get tired. You don't want to do that to people. So you got to use it selectively. You know, it's perfect when you have that occasional neon sign to make that pop, and you're kind of watching it like, oh yeah, that looks really cool. But if you take skin tones and you max them, you put them up at 800 nits, it's gonna look like crap. You just can't do that. It's too much. Don't do that to people. Just don't do that. So anyway. Michael Ball, my A10 Mini Extreme gets stuck with a blinking red streaming light after I hit stop. Any idea what that particular status means? Well, that usually means it's not streaming anymore, and it should be. But you hit stop and then it starts doing that? That's weird. I actually have an Extreme showing up here, I think tomorrow, that is on loan from Blackmagic, so I can do some stuff with that. I will watch out for that. I have not seen that. But yeah, when it starts flashing, it is no longer streaming. It could be because the cache is full, or you've lost internet, but it's not. If you're flashing, you're in trouble. But you're hitting stop and then it starts flashing. That's super weird. I do not know. Good, do not know. Yeah, their manuals. Their manual has more exclamation points than explanations for a lot of things. I'd say that's not the real great advantage of HDR. For me, HDR is great as it allows you to see details in the highlights and the shadows at the same time, and that's a great storytelling tool. Totally. Absolutely. You have that range. It's that dynamic range, being able to get more detail in your shadows and more detail in your highlights at the same time. That is the beauty of it. It just looks amazing. It looks so good. Good HDR looks so good. You're welcome. Let's see here. That is stream on solid red, hit off stream stop. Yep, I got it. Yeah, I got it. I don't know, man. I don't know. Corrected HDR doesn't mean you have to go that bright, just means you can. It's a bigger box. There you go. There you go. The Punisher on Netflix was like that too. Oh, really? See, I watched The Punisher before I had an HDR TV. Maybe I should go back and look at it. HDR done badly looks like a clown vomited on the screen. That'll happen. That'll definitely happen. Stranger Things 3 is a good implementation of HDR. Oh, cool. Haven't gotten around to watching Altered Carbon yet. Okay, watch Altered Carbon. It's awesome. I really loved it. Especially the first season. The second season was good, but first season was such a good story. I have not watched Stranger Things 3. I don't think I ever finished season 2. I just kind of lost interest for some reason, but maybe I should go back and look at it. Always good to watch a good implementation of HDR. You also have to turn off the stupid default HDR settings on consumer TVs because they overbrighten by default. Yeah, that's a really good point too. Aaron, you should do one of those videos about what to turn off. There's a lot of them out there, I know, but from the perspective of a professional colorist, I think that would be a really interesting thing. I've watched a lot of videos that are by like professional TV reviewers, right? This is what they do is they review TVs and they turn probably a lot of the same modes off, but I think they do it a lot of times for different reasons. I was just watching a video where they were talking about turning these things off to bring everything to the same level so they can compare different televisions apples to apples, which is an interesting rationale for doing it. And I don't know that it's necessarily fair to the TV manufacturer, but whatever. I think it would be really interesting to get from your perspective as consumers. I would love to see it as doing color grading as well. But as consumers, what you should turn off on TVs and what you should leave on. I think that would be really, really interesting to get your take on it as a professional colorist. So should totally do that. Totally do that. I forget where you live, but maybe when we can travel again, we can do that together. That'd be kind of fun, actually. Matthew says, my issue with HDR grading is getting the midtones matched to the HDR midtones. So many HDR videos on YouTube have the midtones too dark versus their SDR upload. Yeah, that's the going back and forth, just trying to get the right comparison. Aaron says, I just got the video assist HDR and the colors look super saturated on the monitor compared to the video I see output of the HDMI. I don't understand it. That sounds like a setting on the video assist. I've actually never used a video assist, but it sounds like a setting. Match to the HDR midtones, yes. turns out there's an 861 ATEM update today. Correct. Maybe that'll help, but there's not great detail in the logs. The 861 ATEM update is specifically to allow you to choose whether you're to assign priority to cellular or Ethernet on the ATEM. It's a setting that exists in the Blackmagic web presenter that did not exist in the ATEMs. That's specifically what that adds. Of course, there might be other things in there too, but that is what that has added. Let's see, Aaron, are you going to do a video on that? All right, that's the last question there so far. So again, any questions you guys want? Otherwise, we're going to wrap this thing up. This has been interesting. So out of all of that, obviously, this is a very high level, again, the TLDW version, which is still way more detailed than I will put in that video. That has to be a sub 10-minute video, but I will cover those basics, just obviously a bit more concise than this when I do that video. But what do you guys think? I mean, knowing what you know now versus what you knew before you started watching this, do you feel more inclined to do HDR? Do you think that you might actually try it out and see how it looks? Granted, you don't have to, you have to have, you need an HDR display to view it on, but you will grade by scopes, right? That's critical. You're looking at the waveform monitor when you're grading. Super, super critical you do that. If you can't see it in HDR while you're grading, it's a lot harder because you are going to have to output it and look at it on an iPhone or something like that, but it can be done. You would never do it without ever looking at it on an HDR display. That would be crazy, but you could do it outputting out to looking at an iPhone later if that was your only choice. But even like I've got the M1 MacBook Air, right? Its screen, I forget the brightness now. Is it 400 nits? Right. I think it's 400 nits. The iPad, I think, is 600. I think that's right. I think I got that right. I can do HDR on there, but again, if I go higher in that level, things start to clip on there. But it's acceptable, right? It's an acceptable way to do a color grade, but you're gonna have to verify it on a true HDR monitor for sure. Aaron, you're right. Maybe I should do a video on fixing bad TV things. I unfortunately don't have as much time for YouTube as I'd like. I get it. Too much film work to do, but maybe. Yeah. I mean, like I said, maybe someday, we join forces on that. That'd be a fun one. That would be a fun one. You'll try it out. Lee, I think examples would help people to visualize things to better understand. Well, yeah. I mean, when I do a proper video, obviously there'll be all kinds of examples. If that is what you meant. Would you do a video on making LUTs? Definitely an area I'd love to get more practice with. Not for doing creative LUTs because I'm really bad at that. I do, and because to do it, I would have to be doing it in Resolve so I could output the LUT. I think I can do what I need to do to get a look that I need, but like going creative, that's tough. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's for me. You can kind of use a non-HDR display with tone mapping and FCP. Right, and so that's a big part of what Final Cut will do is they have a tone mapping option where they ramp the colors down, so at least they don't clip, but they will still clip if you go too high. But at least you can see it, but it's not. You're not seeing HDR. But it helps. It helps, for sure. Aaron did a good job. Aaron did an excellent job. Sheldon Dunn has some great videos about HDR color grading, HDR footage too. Yeah, he did a long live show about it, and he was working specifically with HLG, unless I have missed one that he did on working from log. But working from log is very different because, well, for all the reasons I already explained. But if Gerald did one on grading from log, I've missed that. But I know he did one on working from HLG. You just want basic LUTs. Well, basic LUTs, so depending on your camera manufacturer, if you're shooting with Panasonic, for example, you can download a huge pack of LUTs for free from the Panasonic Vericam website. And these are all free. They work in your GH5 or in your S1H, and you can load those LUTs up and you can get their looks. Granted, most of them are a bit silly, but they do have a couple of base LUTs that are quite good. That'll give you a very nice baseline to start with. So you definitely can do that. Juka says, I love HDR. I have problems to use my Asus HDR external. I guess that's the question. I have problems to use my Asus HDR external monitor on my iMac. Okay, so I don't know what the problem is. However, I will tell you, if you have an HDR monitor, HDR capable computer monitor, first of all, it's probably not that high of a nit value. Like I've got a BenQ in front of me and its actual max brightness is like 300 nits or something. So it's not really, you can put it into HDR mode and it's not really HDR. But if you have a monitor that is supposed to be HDR, and when you hook it up to your Mac, you're not getting an HDR signal from it. It's not showing, you're not getting the option to go to here. Let me show you what I mean. If you are not getting this, let me pull this up and I'll share my screen. Let's see here. Let's get rid of that and pull this up. Okay, here I'm going to bring up two different displays here, and let's go to here. Okay, if you are, let's just get rid of that. Actually, we can do that. There we go. I forgot to change my preset to go to the other side. Okay, so here we've got my display settings for the XDR display and for the BenQ. The BenQ has a high dynamic range checkbox here. If I click that, my screen will turn off and it'll come back in an HDR mode. But again, this BenQ is like a 300 nit maximum or something. It's not really HDR. If you have a monitor that should be HDR, but you're not seeing this, it has to do with how it's connected. Depends on what your output is. Did you say what computer you have? iMac. Okay, so you've got an iMac. You need this. Let's go back to that. There we go. You need this. This is the Apple HDR. Stop focusing on my eyes. There we go. This is the Apple USB-C, so USB-C to HDR HDMI, sorry, to HDMI adapter. You need either this or Belkin. I don't know where it is. It's plugged in somewhere. Belkin makes one as well. They're about the same price. The advantage of the Apple one is you get a USB-C as well, pass through for power, and a USB-A, which is nice. But for your iMac, you wouldn't need this, but you could get either this or the Belkin one. This will pass through the HDR metadata that will allow your monitor to work in HDR. If you are not using one of these adapters, like let's say you bought a USB-C to HDMI cable, chances are that is not going to work. So that would not give you the HDR. The HDR metadata is not being passed through. So if you're not seeing that checkbox, you need a different cable pathway. And again, if you're on an iMac, then USB-C out. If you have an older iMac that doesn't have USB-C, then I don't know that it's possible. It might not be possible. So anyway, hopefully that helps. Let's see. If you're shooting with Sony, Sony, Alistair Chapman has some great free LUTs on his site. Okay, cool. Excellent. To grade HDR, you should have a monitor that is minimum 1000 nits. True dat. True dat. The XDR display, by the way, is 1600 nit peak brightness, which is insane. And it's kind of funny when you're working with it, the way it kind of automatically changes modes, and it'll get confused sometimes if you're switching back and forth between apps. And suddenly, like Final Cut's UI will be super, super dark. You're like, God damn it. And you got to kind of quit and relaunch it. Or you pull up a video, an HDR video on YouTube, and the video looks brilliant. It gets really bright. And then I haven't figured out if the rest of the UI actually goes darker or if it just appears darker because the video is so bright. I never did quite figure that one out. But the XDR display changes modes automatically. But if we go back and you look at this again, gotta change that. You'll see in here that you have these presets that, see right now it's in the 1600 nit preset because I was editing HDR right before the show. But yeah, you have the different presets, but you don't generally have to change them. It just kind of does what it does on its own because, because Apple. Okay. Anyway, let's see here. Aaron was saying, Michael, you can export results, color management, color space transforms as LUTs if you want something really solid, but pretty basic. Wait, where's part 2? 1 out of 2. I guess maybe he's still typing part 2. Okay, we'll bring that back up. We'll try HDR. Need an excuse to add waveform monitor vlog option to my G9. Sure would be nice if photos could use a waveform monitor. That would be cool, wouldn't it? Okay. Aaron, I'm waiting for your part 2. I'm assuming that 1/2 meant that there was going to be a part 2 coming. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this thing up. Oh, there it comes. Nope, that's not it. Lee says, perception is reality. If it looks good, if it looks like it's going darker than it is, to your brain, true that. True that. Okay. That's why I use scopes when grading. You gotta use the scopes. You cannot rely on your eyes. Your eyes will lie to you. They lie. It's just like shooting still photos. Look at the histogram on the back of your camera. It's the only truth. Doesn't matter how bright or dark the image looks on your screen. The truth is the histogram. That is the truth. It is the only truth. Here's Aaron's part 2. Okay, let's go back to Aaron's part 1 again. Aaron said, you can export resolves, color management, color space transforms as LUTs if you want something really solid but pretty basic. I show how at 4:07 in the latest video on my channel. Oh, good. Well, I got to watch a new video. It's an example for Rec 2020 ST2084 to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, but you can put any camera manufacturer's color space as input instead. Oh, interesting. Super. I have to remember. I gotta go check that out. Okay. We're wrapping this thing up. Man, that was good. I hope you guys, I hope that was enjoyable. I hope that was educational. I hope you guys like that. For the folks that were still hanging out on the other stream, I don't know why you're watching it over there, but now you've missed the show and a chance to answer, to get your questions answered. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe. Oh yeah, I forgot. I got a little button there and everything. Look at that. I keep forgetting to push that button. I got a little animation up and everything. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and the main YouTube channel, obviously, if you're not there. But please, please, please do subscribe to this channel. Got to hit that 1,000 so I can monetize. And you guys can do the super chats. It'd be super nice. But also, you know, let's just make sure people find these videos. So that's that. Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah. We're done here. Thanks a bunch, everybody. Super fun to see everybody, as always. Thank you very much. Next week, I don't know if we're doing a morning or an evening show. I can't remember. My schedule goes pretty silly over the next couple of months. Yeah. Okay, that's it. See you later. Bye.